the reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable.
And this should have been done by Biden years ago. This should have never been allowed to happen. I know he's a friend of yours.
But couldn't Putin just withdraw his...
He's a friend of
today?
CNN. That's why nobody watches CNN anymore.
Who advised the president on the legality of telling government agencies that they don't have to spend money that was already appropriated by Congress?
Well, as the OMB memo states, this is certainly within the confines of the law. So White House counsel's office believes that this is within the president's power to do it, and therefore he's doing it.
Okay, so they disagree with lawmakers who say that they don't have the power to freeze this funding.
Again, I would point you to the language in the memo that clearly states this is within the law.
Karoline Leavitt has gone head-to-head with Kaitlan Collins again, and this time, the fireworks are massive. These two have been at each other's throats ever since Karoline took over as White House press secretary, exchanging fiery salvos, with Karoline always coming out on top. But their latest showdown was so brutal that people are starting to wonder how Collins even still has a job. What exactly did Karoline say that turned Collins into a stuttering mess on live TV? And could this be the final nail in the coffin for Collins's credibility? Stay tuned, because this one's a spectacle you don't want to miss. Karoline Leavitt has had some famous, or should I say infamous, banter with CNN's Kaitlan Collins over the past few weeks, setting off more fireworks than a 4th of July finale. But their latest showdown has ignited a media meltdown so spectacular it could qualify for its own disaster relief fund. It all started when the ever-intrepid Collins thought she had Leavitt cornered with this question. Now,
which White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night?
Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the President questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office, and you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
This question might sound simple and look harmless, but don't be fooled. It was a setup, a trap, a desperate attempt at a gotcha moment. Kaitlan Collins wasn't just asking a question, she was laying an ambush. She wanted that viral clip, the one where she exposed some huge contradiction in the Leavitt-Trump administration. The smug look, the confident posture. Collins was convinced she had this in the bag. But here's the problem. Karoline Leavitt isn't some rookie spokesperson fumbling her way through talking points. She's a political brawler. She saw Collins coming from a mile away, and instead of walking into the trap, she flipped the script hard. Not only did she dodge the setup, but she turned it right back on Kaitlan in a way that left the CNN journalist scrambling. By declaring that access to the Oval Office isn't some entitlement for journalists, Karoline wasn't just taking a jab at Kaitlan, she was setting up a full-blown mic drop moment. It was a masterclass in control, flipping the narrative before Collins even knew what hit her. Now, listen carefully to this clip.
But isn't it retaliatory in nature is the argument, because the reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is.
And I'll come back with my thoughts. Denied her precious gotcha moment, Kaitlan dropped the act and came clean. Her entire setup had been about one thing: the Associated Press's so-called ban from the Oval Office. The goal? To paint the Trump administration as hypocrites, loud champions of the First Amendment who suddenly got cold feet when they stepped into power. It was classic media spin, and Collins was sure she had a winning angle. But here's where it all fell apart. Karoline Leavitt, always 10 steps ahead, wasn't about to let Collins twist the narrative. With a calm but razor-sharp takedown, she reminded everyone that she had vowed to hold the media accountable for their lies, distortions, and outright propaganda. And part of that accountability, making sure outlets like the AP, which recklessly pushed misinformation, weren't granted automatic access to the most powerful office in the world. The message was clear: press freedom doesn't mean freedom from consequences. And just like that, Kaitlan's big exposé turned into yet another self-inflicted disaster. But did
Mr. President, you won the White House in part because of high inflation. If your tariffs make prices go up...
Excuse me, we haven't asked you to speak yet, please. Right?
Kaitlan finally learn her lesson? No. Here she is, sparring with the leader of the free world, Donald Trump. Trump shut her down because she wasn't just pushy, she was downright disrespectful. It's his office now, and he sets the rules. He decides who speaks and when. If he doesn't call on you, you don't get to hijack the moment. Simple as that. But instead of respecting the process like every other journalist in the room, Kaitlan thought she could bulldoze her way through. Trump wasn't silencing the press. He was maintaining order while giving other reporters the chance to ask their questions. The best move for Kaitlan? Wait her turn like a professional instead of throwing
RFK Jr. as the next health secretary, citing conspiracy theories. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I feel sorry for Mitch. And I was one of the people that he wanted to go to the end and he wanted to stay leader. He's not equipped mentally. He wasn't equipped 10 years ago mentally, in my opinion. He'd let the Republican Party go to hell. If I didn't come along, the Republican Party wouldn't even exist right now. Mitch McConnell never really had it. He had an ability to raise money because of his position as leader, which anybody could do. You could do it even. And that's saying a lot.
A tantrum for attention. But of course, decorum isn't exactly CNN's strong suit. And Trump? He wasn't done with Kaitlan just yet. He took a swipe at Kaitlan while answering a question about Mitch McConnell. Donald Trump knows how to deliver a roast, and this time, Kaitlan Collins was on the receiving end of a brutal one. With just a few sharp jabs, he sent her scrambling, fumbling for a comeback that never arrived. And then came the knockout punch. He looked her dead in the eye and told her she was just as incompetent as Mitch McConnell. Ouch. The room went silent for a split second before the weight of that insult settled in. Collins had walked in expecting to control the narrative, but instead, she got publicly dismantled. It wasn't just a casual insult. It was a calculated surgical strike.
And this should have been done by Biden years ago. This should have never been allowed to happen. I know he's a friend of yours.
But couldn't Putin just withdraw his...
He's a friend of
today?
CNN. That's why nobody watches CNN anymore.
That exposed her bias, her weak arguments, and her failed attempts at playing hardball. Trump wasn't just shutting her down. He was reminding her and the entire press corps who really runs the show. And judging by Kaitlan's stunned expression, she definitely got the message. But Trump wasn't done. Let's be honest, this isn't Trump's first rodeo with CNN. His battles with the network go way back, and if there's one thing he's mastered, it's exposing their bias in real time. Remember Jim Acosta, the so-called journalist who made a career out of interrupting Trump and grandstanding in press briefings? That ended with Trump revoking his White House credentials after one too many outbursts. And now, Kaitlan Collins is following in Acosta's footsteps. Same network.
When they went to the Capitol and they were breaking into the Capitol, smashing windows, injuring police officers, why did it take you 3 hours to tell them to go home?
I don't believe it did. Oh, let me pull it out. I have to pull it out. So if you look at, on January 5th, the day before, I said, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. Stay peaceful. This was the day before, and this was in the form of Twitter. Now use Truth Social. I think it's far superior, okay? I hope everybody's on Truth. If you look January 6th, this is before 2:30. I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. This is right after, as it was happening. But what happened is they took it down. I don't know why. I think they took it down because it was so good. They didn't like it being up there. I am asking, and we didn't know until I got it back, because now I have 90 million people waiting for me to go back, but I'm on Truth and I'm staying on Truth. Listen, I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violation. We want no violation. We want no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. That was at 2:30. That was very early.
Same tactics, same humiliating outcome. Trump has never backed down from calling out CNN's antics, and every encounter just further proves how desperate they are to trip him up. But time and time again, they fail, because while CNN is playing for gotcha moments, Trump is playing to win. Y'all remember this famous encounter between Trump and Kaitlan? When they went to the Capitol, smashing windows, injuring police officers, why did it take you 3 hours to tell them to go home? I don't believe it did. Oh, let me pull it out. I have to pull it out. Trump pulls out receipts and shoves them right in Kaitlan's face, proving her and the entire woke media machine wrong. 4 years, they've pushed the same tired narrative, that Trump incited his supporters to storm the Capitol and take down democracy.
But that's the question that investigators have, I think, is why you held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's
you
the
mind?
answer?
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to, you're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
They've painted him as some power-hungry tyrant, a so-called dictator in waiting, hell-bent on ruling Americans against their will. But here's the reality they don't want to admit. Trump did call for peace. He did tell his supporters to stop and respect law enforcement. And now, with hard evidence to back him up, he's dismantling the media's manufactured lies one by one. But did that stop the woke media machine? Of course not, because to them, it was never about the truth. It was about pushing a narrative, no matter how many lies it took to keep it alive. Meanwhile, Leavitt is still having a field day at the expense of Kaitlan and her woke colleagues. Yep. Leavitt is spot on. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And if that's the case, the left and the woke media must be completely off their rockers. They've been setting the exact same traps for years, baiting, twisting words, taking things out of context, each time convinced that this will be the moment Trump or his team.
The historic proposal for the United States to take over Gaza, announced by President Trump last night, underscores this commitment. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. President Trump is an outside-of-the-box thinker and a visionary leader who solves problems that many others, especially in this city, claim are unsolvable.
Here's the reality they don't want to admit. Trump did call for peace. He did tell his supporters to stop and respect law enforcement. And now, with hard evidence to back him up, he's dismantling the media's manufactured lies one by one. But did that stop the woke media machine? Of course not, because to them, it was never about the truth. It was about pushing a narrative, no matter how many lies it took to keep it alive. Meanwhile, Leavitt is still having a field day at the expense of Kaitlan and her woke colleagues. Yep. Leavitt is spot on. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And if that's the case, the left and the woke media must be completely off their rockers. They've been setting the exact same traps for years, baiting, twisting words, taking things out of context, each time convinced that this will be the moment Trump or his team crumbles. And every single time, utter disappointment. But do they learn? Nope. They double down, recycle the same tired tactics, and somehow expect a different outcome. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. See you in the next episode.